Good morning. Will you stand and sing Victory in Jesus this morning? I heard an old story, how a Savior came from glory, how he gave his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me. I heard about his glory, of his precious blood's atoning. Then I repented of my sins and won the victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew him, and all my love is to him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing blood. Amen. Be seated.
Good morning. Happy to see you all with your great smiles. Find 3 people to show off your smile, and if you have a mask on, just wave. Ready? Go. Such a lovely day to be at church. Glad that I'm here with you. Before we start the service, there are a couple of announcements. So listen up. Hopefully you've read the bulletin. Just know that tonight at 5 o'clock, come back here with your arm and knee pads and some ibuprofen. It's volleyball fellowship tonight, 5 o'clock. Now, if you're over the age of 50, you may need to get here about an hour and a half early, just do some stretching. So be here about 3:30. But 5 o'clock, volleyball fellowship. Wednesday night, just remember that you need to sign up for supper by tomorrow. And that will be at 5:30 on Wednesday. And then 6 o'clock, we have our devotion and missions time for the kids. Mark, close your ears. Plug them. Seriously, plug them. Bring a card. We'll appreciate Mark Wednesday. We just couldn't get that announcement out without Mark being in the room. What? Yeah. Okay. All right. Trunk or treat. Big event. Next Sunday night at 5 o'clock. Everyone's welcome to bring their trunks and put a lot of treats in them for the children. But if you just want to help out, you can give treats to us to give out to the children. We're also going to have a sack supper. So it's going to be like a hot dog, chips, and goodies to go in the back for us to eat together, but keep the germs down. So we need your help with cookies that can be individually wrapped and grab and go, or brownies, my favorite, or Debbie cakes. If you're going to just buy some boxes of Debbie cakes, that will be helpful. So there are some ways that you can help for the trunk or treat next Sunday. All right, hopefully... Yes, you're going to see a picture up here. This is a picture of canned ham. Yes, looks delicious. Well, next month for November, we are wanting to collect these canned hams or canned turkeys that we can give out for Thanksgiving in the food pantry distribution. So if you could collect those canned meats next month, that would be great. And last thing I want to say, those of you who got up early yesterday morning and you were digging, you're in the dirt, if you noticed today, they put out some really cool landscaping. If you drove up, you see it. But I would ask them to stand and we could recognize them, but I'm sure they're in a lot of pain and can't stand up from all the bending over. But thank you, guys and gals who did all that work yesterday. But Mr. Brent, come on up here. He has an announcement to make.
can't be good if I'm here, but let me tell you what we're doing. Let me update you on what we're doing. We came and we talked a few months ago about doing renovations. Let me tell you what we've done so far and where we're at. And I'll go through it as quickly as I can, but I want everybody to understand what all's taking place. The floor, we've replaced and repaired the subfloor. We've enhanced the steps to the pulpit. There's new carpet, new shoe molding. In the pulpit area, there are handrails. They're remodeled the pulpit area to be much more open. In the pews, we reconditioned them, paint, stain, foam, fabric, respaced them. The choir chairs did the same, got those refabricated. So the front porch, there's new bigger columns. We are replacing the wrought iron rails that were rusted out on the front. Replaced the front door. Electrical, we repaired and replaced the lights in the steeple. The bulbs in the sanctuary are all high quality LED bulbs. We've installed new lights in the ceiling of the porch. Paint, there's probably nowhere in this place that hadn't been painted. If you weren't moving, you were painted. We painted the inside of the sanctuary, the front porch, the iron rails, the outside doors, the iron steps leading up, everywhere that could be painted that needed painting. We tried to take care of that. Landscaping, as all of y'all saw this morning, we removed and replaced the landscaping. It's beautiful outside. And then we installed 14 of the most beautiful stained glass windows you'll ever see. So that brings us to what are we doing next? Our things to do is we're going to put new coach lights on the front porch, clean the carpet in the sanctuary. I've had a lot of folks help me understand it needs cleaning. We knew it would. We knew it would. So we're going to get it cleaned. Have a sanctuary sound system and a camera installed. We're probably looking at installing some landscape lights so the windows are as beautiful at night as they are in the day from inside. The wrought iron rails are going to get installed this week on the front porch. We're also going to do the gutters, reinstall those and repair them where we took them down to do it. And that brings us to support. There's been a lot of support from this church. There's been a lot of gathering around, putting your hand in the huddle and coming out working hard. And it shows. It's all new in there. It's an all new outside. You know, we've had a lot of support from prayers, from labor, from financial. And what I want to talk to you now is we're right at the end of that. We're close to being able to finish it and reimagine something that we couldn't have imagined a few months ago when we first started this. Where are we at? We have done wonders for budgets and amount of stuff. If you remember the little PowerPoint I did for you, a lot of the things that I just called out were not on that PowerPoint, were they? We did them. We did them and pushed forward because the opportunity was there, the people were there, and the gifts were available. We like to complete what we need to do and not borrow any money, $12,800. You hearing what I'm saying? $12,800. That is unbelievable. Unbelievable in this time of building materials, expensive as they are, of labor being as hard to find as it is, and here we are this close. We're this close to not just painting the sanctuary and fixing the pews. We're close to having something that we can be proud of for generations to come. And we can also have something that has our thumbprint from all of us in here on it. And we can look back and say, I was there when. Just like in that front glass, it's got the picture of the original Ohatchee number 2. I know the people that built that church are just as proud of that one as our renovation that we've done. That's their thumbprint. Let's complete and finish our thumbprint. We can do this. This is an easy something for us to do. Another thing that we're going to talk about in the coming months is a phase 2 of this renovation. And that'd be the parking lot where we're going to pave it, seal it, stripe it. Awnings over the doors to protect our newly painted doors and make them last even longer. And do some door security in some of the doors that we've got that lead in and out. So all these things we have in front of us and all of us we have an opportunity to do. If you've not been in that sanctuary, if you've not seen those windows, if you hadn't witnessed the all new that's in there, let me encourage you to do that after the service. Go in there and look at it. Open your heart, see it with your eyes, but more importantly, see it with your heart. And then you think about $12,800, and let's laugh while we not only pay that off, but we put a good down payment on our phase 2. Thank you for letting me do this.
Thank you, Brent. And in 2 Sundays, you will no longer be sitting in those hard green plastic chairs, but newly cushioned pews. Yes. So we'll get to enjoy all that in 2 Sundays. Excited about that. All right. So let's pray together. Pray with me. God, what a beautiful day. The sun peeking through the windows. It just makes us smile with joy. We are thankful for beautiful weather and these beautiful people here, this beautiful place. We thank you for it. And we are here to give our all, take away our distractions, any worries, and let our focus be on you. And let our praise and worship not stop when we are finished here. May our worship continue as we leave this place and go out into the world and to show your love and how we treat others and how we interact with your creation. Let it be all for you. Amen.
Good morning. How are you today? Well, I know your bulletin says Kate Hamby, and I know it's hard to tell the difference, but she'll be here next Sunday. So me and her kind of we swapped. But I wanted to show you something that I've got here. Now, my little girl, she's all grown up now. She's sitting right over there. But this was one of her favorite books when she was little. And I read this to her every night, Sleeping Babies. The only one that wasn't sleeping was Lori. But she did not do sleep very well. But I just read her books and finally she'd go to sleep. Well, in this book, and I used to tell her, I used to say, now don't write in your books. That, let's keep the books really good, But you know what? Look there, what'd she do? She colored it, didn't she? She colored it all up. But you know what? When I look at all of these markings in here now, boy, does it bring back a lot of good memories when she was a little girl. And it really doesn't bother me now when I look at those crayon marks that she made, because it just tells me now that she really did love this book, and she really did want to be reading it all the time and marking in it, and it just showed she loved that book. But anyway, so aren't you glad that we're learning to read and we have books? This is one of the books that I learned to read out of. Fun with Dick and Jane. Bet there's a bunch of you in here that remembers this. Well, this was an old reader, and I looked forever till I found a copy of one of these, and I just treasure it. And it's sitting up on one of my shelves, and so I really worked hard to find that book, and I finally found one. But then there's another book, and I know you know about this book. But there's a lot of good books out there, isn't there? I mean, lots of them. But this book right here, what is this? This is the Bible. And, I looked through here, And I've used this Bible for so many years. I've had a lot of, even a different church that I went to at the time when my little girl was small. I've just written all through this Bible. And I've got quotes from former pastors and things that is said that I wanted to be in this book. And then I noticed that, I've got all these places that I've highlighted and I've circled and all that kind of stuff. And so that means I love this book, just like Lori loved that book, right? And so I believe the sooner we can learn to love the Bible, the better. Because it has so many good things. It's all good. All of it's good. But there's just certain things through your life that's said in this Bible that is going to change your life. And it needs to be circled or starred where that you can go back and continue to read those things all of your life. So does that make sense? Well, good. Thank you for coming down. All righty.
This next hymn is a wonderful vow and renewing our commitment. Take my life and let it be consecrated. Will you join and lift your voices with us again?
Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for Thee. Swift and beautiful for Thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. Take my intellect and use every part as Thou shalt choose, every part as Thou shalt choose. You are my strength when I am weak. You're the treasure that I seek. You are my all in all. Seeking You as a precious jewel, Lord, to give up I'd be a fool. You are my all in all. Jesus, Lamb of God, worthy is Your name.
be seated.
Just a moment, please. Okay, 2 Corinthians 6 through 12. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I got this. The point is this: the one who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and the one who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each of you must give as you have made up your mind, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to provide you with every blessing in abundance, so that always having enough of everything, you may share abundantly in every good work. As it is written, He scatters abroad, He gives to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for the food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way for your great generosity, which will produce thanksgiving to God through us. For the rendering of his ministry not only supplies the needs of the saints, but also overflows with many thanksgivings to God.
As the choir makes their way up, this is a beautiful song. I'm sure you'll remember it says, "You are more precious than silver, and I stand in awe of you, Lord."
Lord, you are more precious than silver. Lord, you are more costly than gold. Lord, you are more beautiful than diamonds, and nothing I desire compares with you. Lord, you are more precious than silver. Lord, you are more costly than gold. Lord, you are more beautiful than diamonds, and nothing I desire compares with you. And I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. Holy God, to whom all praise is due. I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. Holy God, to whom all praise is due, I stand in awe of you. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Let the earth hear his voice. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Let the people rejoice. And I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. Holy God, to whom all praise is due, I stand in awe of you. 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 And nothing I desire compares with you.
Thank you, choir. I've noticed the only thing missing in the choir is a little help for Cody and Sean. So any of you guys who can sing or who can fake it, we need you in the choir, right? You know, over the last several weeks, I've interviewed several Williams celebrities. Now, none of them would see themselves as celebrities, but I'm going to introduce our interview celebrity in just a minute. But I want you to take a mental trip with me for just a moment. Is it too early for that, or can we do it? All right, we're going to Rome, Italy. We're going to the Vatican. And there we are in St. Peter's Square. There are thousands of people, and they're from all over the world, and there's a real excitement. The crowd's waiting for something, for an appearance and a proclamation. And the buzz is noticeable. And here come two men walking out onto the balcony. And there's cheering because they see these two men. And then there's just sort of a puzzlement that sweeps over the crowd. They're not quite sure. And you can hear some questions being asked. And the question is, who is that guy next to Bobby Burns? Bobby's going to join me up here for just a few minutes. And most of you know that this has been a tough week for Bobby. And he has graciously agreed to sing a solo this morning. Or not. Yeah. Have a seat, friend. So you lean into that just a little bit. Bobby, I think there's so many people who know and love you. A lot of them are here, and I don't think this building is large enough to contain the folks that you have mentored, you've taught, you've loved on, you've supported. There's something that happens in a person's life that encourages them to be generous. Tell me about how you approach that, how you have in the past, how you continue to do it. I know you're that way because I have to fight you for a check at a restaurant. But tell me a little bit about your perspective on generosity.
I don't. Just something that the Bible says. Well, actually, Andy, some of the scripture he read this morning about being a cheerful giver, and I really believe the scripture, and paraphrase Paul, but you really can't outgive God, and it's almost like an addiction to some degree. That feeling you have of happiness that you're able to help someone. And Gail and I made a commitment actually before we married that we would tithe. And so that's been important to us that we maintain that at whatever level we were at. Sometimes it was a challenge, never impossible, but that's sort of how we've approached it.
Well, there are a lot of ways to be generous. We can be generous with our time and our talent and our treasure. And you've managed to do all of those things because you've invested in things that last. And you have invested in the lives of a lot of young people. And you see them all over. Everywhere you go, people, they know Burns. They know who this man is and what he's done. So there's a testimony that you share just by the way you face every day. And when we talk about that, you're not the only person who has adversity in his life, but you have some really big challenges. How do you deal with that? How do you confront the day-to-day, looking down the road? How do you continue to have such a positive spirit?
I would say the song Bill and Glory Gaither wrote, Because He Lives. I can face tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you don't have to face it by yourself.
Oh, no.
You got family and lots of people who love on you.
Faith that I just believe God uses other people to support my faith every day through the cards, the texts, phone calls. And you're right, I'm not the only person that faces it. But I can't imagine facing it without faith.
Amen.
I can't.
Well, let me pray for you. Father, I thank you for this good man, this godly man. And I know, Lord, that he's on our hearts and in our minds as we continue to think of him and pray for him, for Gail, for his whole family. How thankful we are for the good news he's shared with the birth of a precious little girl. We ask you to continue to watch over Mom and that little precious girl, and Dad too. But I thank you so much that Bobby is so much a part of the life of this church and this community. And I ask you, Lord, to please keep him close to your heart. These things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you, brother. Hand me another brick. As I was listening to Brent talk about all that's been accomplished, and I saw the pictures that Eva sent me yesterday of all of the efforts being made to beautify the campus, I realized that you get it. You understand that you have a part to play. I don't know all that's in your particular brick, but you're willing to take what you have, what you choose to do to bless this church. I think it's great, but it's just a start. There's so much more that can happen beside a renovation project of a sanctuary and all the things that have gone into it. There's so much more that God wants to do, but it requires each of us to take the brick that someone will hand you. Today's sermon title is, I will not offer to the Lord that which costs me nothing. That comes out of the story of David, who wanted to build an altar to God. And there was a man who was willing to donate some land so that could be done. And David was appreciative of the man's offer, but he said, I can't accept it because I will not offer to the Lord something that costs me nothing. I want to talk to you today about how generosity enriches our lives. And the theme for the sermon today is inside the soul of every Christian is a God-inspired desire for the generous life. We were created to share our lives. We can do that in a lot of ways. We've talked about the 3 T's: time, talent, and treasure. Do you know that none of that belongs to you? You don't own a thing. God has made you steward of your life. My wife and I have 2 sons. We've told you about them. Very proud of them. Both of them are involved in ministry. But they're not our possessions. God's entrusted them to us. And I'm grateful that they've come to know the Lord, and I'm grateful that they're serving the Lord in the various capacities where their time and talent and treasure put to work. But somehow we have thought that we own it all. I don't own a thing. My very life, every breath I take is a gift. And I'm going to be held accountable for the way I exercise my stewardship. And I'm not just talking about money, but I am talking about money. Do you know in the average church, 50% of the members of that church give nothing or next to nothing? That ain't right. Now, that's not in the Bible, but it's gospel. That ain't right. If I'm going to take my brick, I'm going to give the very best I have for the kingdom of God. And the kingdom of God is a lot more than a campus where these buildings are constructed. Our mission field is when we step off of this campus into the world that God cares deeply about. Our text today comes from Paul's letter to Timothy. He was talking about the people in Timothy's church, and particularly those who are blessed. Every blessing that you and I receive carries with it a responsibility and an opportunity. Here's what Paul wrote to his child in the faith, now a grown man, a pastor in Ephesus. You tell them they are to do good, to be rich in good works, generous and ready to share, thus storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may have hold of the life that is really life. Let's talk about generosity for a minute. There was a preacher in a small church in northwest Indiana who on Thursday mornings would often take his 2 small boys to a Bible study. And there they met an elderly gentleman named George. And every time the boys went, George would take a donut and break it in half and give it to the little one. Well, one day the little boy showed up with a bag of Cheerios. And George says, "Hey, can I have some?" So the little boy took out 1 Cheerio, broke it in half, and gave it to him. Is that generosity? What does generosity look like? Generous people are the ones who give more than is expected of them. Generous people have open hearts, minds, and hands. If you were to grab a handful of sand, could you hold more this way or this way? Oh, you might lose some if you do it this way, but you can put a whole lot more into an open hand. How open are your hands? When we clutch things, we think we own them. Generous people have open hearts, minds, and hands. Generous people reflect the heart of God. Generous people display selflessness and sacrifice. Generous people give and share out of joy, not obligation. Just what we heard from the scripture this morning and what Bobby reinforced. My wife and I tithe. I've done it since I was a little boy. I didn't have a whole lot, But I learned a discipline, a practice, a habit. But let me be just real honest with you at this point. Tithing isn't necessarily being generous. Tithing is how I respect the place of God in my life. When I make an offering, like many of you have done, when you've supported reaching out to the school and providing meals for people who just need something to eat, when you go beyond, when you make an offering, you're going beyond what's expected to that which not only will brighten the lives of other people, but it'll brighten your life too. The owner of the Kraft Cheese Corporation, which is a very successful company, has given approximately 25% of his income, which you can imagine is fairly substantial, 25% of his income to charitable causes, Christian causes, and this is what he said about it. The only investment I ever made, which has paid consistently increasing dividends, is the money I have given the Lord. Think about that next time you buy some cheese from Kraft. God loves a cheerful giver. I was on a mission trip to Ghana, a country in Africa, and got to attend a worship service that went on a while. But an important part of their worship was their offering. And I think Williams ought to adopt this practice. Because at the offering time, people got up in the aisles and they danced their way to the altar to lay their gifts. I'd like to see that happen. Well, maybe not. Okay. We know that God made the first move of generosity. I read a little book by Gordon MacDonald on generosity, and this is what he wrote. From the moment he imparted life to mankind to the climactic gift of salvation through the death of his Son, Jesus Christ, God has set the supreme example of radical, sacrificial giving for his followers. You want to know what generosity looks like? This isn't a very big cross, but it's a great symbol of what generosity is about. He didn't have to do that. He chose to do that. You know why? Because he thought we were worth it. When you love, you don't hold back. You don't place limitations. You don't require conditions. God made the first move. And there are plenty of examples, biblical examples of generosity. In that wonderful book that we ought to treasure, let's think of a few. How about Joseph? We read about him in Genesis. He got himself into trouble with his older brothers, made them really angry because he pretended to be superior to them. And they were so angry that their anger turned to hate. They wanted to kill their brat brother Joseph, but they finally decided instead to sell him to a bunch of slavers. And they forgot about him. They even told their father that he was dead. So Joseph ends up in a caravan of traders, ends up in Egypt, finds himself purchased by Potiphar, the captain of the royal guard, Pharaoh's special troops. He is unjustly accused by Potiphar's wife, ends up in jail. It just seemed like one tragedy after another. But the Bible says something interesting about Joseph. Through all of that, there's this phrase that keeps being repeated, but God was with him. So from the depths of slavery, of being imprisoned, he rises until he's the prime minister of Egypt. His brothers come looking for food because there's no food in the land. Joseph, because he was wise enough to depend upon the leadership of God in his life, helps Pharaoh escape this famine by carefully planning to provide, not only for Egyptians, but for other people in surrounding nations. His brothers come looking for food. They don't know Joseph. They don't recognize him. He recognizes them. He's got them right where he wants them. And in this world of ours, we would expect him to enact great revenge on his brothers, but he doesn't. He forgives them. And he says to them, what you meant for harm, God meant for good. That's the generous spirit we see in Joseph. What about Mary of Bethany? You know, the one whose brother Lazarus was raised from the dead by Jesus? This is in John chapter 12. They give him a banquet, Jesus. They give him a banquet to thank him. And there's Mary and Martha. Martha's serving, as she would typically do. That was her gift. Mary is sitting there wondering, what can I do to show this man, my Lord, how thankful I am for the gift of my brother's life? You know the story. She had one thing that was more expensive than anything else she owned. It was a vase of exotic and expensive perfume. And on that night, when the banquet was going on, Mary goes to Jesus and anoints him, pours that perfume, so much so that the aroma of that perfume would stay with Jesus even as he goes to the cross just a few days later. Mary took the most expensive thing she had and gladly gave it a generous spirit. In Acts, we read about Joseph Barnabas. Barnabas was a nickname. I don't know if you have a nickname or if you can speak of it, but for Barnabas, it was quite a tribute. The disciples loved Barnabas because he just seemed to just set the stage for the way the early church ought to operate. So he had a piece of land, he sold it. And he brought the proceeds, not part of them, not 10% of them. He brought all of it to the disciples and said, listen, I want you to use this as we grow this thing, as we become the people of God, sharing the message of Christ. That's not all we hear about Barnabas, son of encouragement. That's what Barnabas means. Later on, he stands beside this man who is held in great suspicion because of all of the horror he had inflicted upon those believers. He'd hunted them down. He'd had them imprisoned. He had them scourged. He was trying to wipe them out. And then all of a sudden, Christ got a hold of his life and turned him around. And Saul became Paul. Nobody wanted to trust him because they thought he was pulling another scheme to tear things up. And Barnabas stood by his side and said, no, God has done something in this man's life. You need to treat him. You need to be generous in your treatment of him because God's going to do mighty things through this man. That's the Joseph Barnabas we could use in any church. In the early church itself. You read at the end of the 2nd chapter and the 4th chapter of Acts, and you get a picture of what the early church was like. You might see some similarities because they loved to eat. They ate their meals together. They prayed together. They worshiped together. Somebody didn't have enough, they'd share it with them. The Bible says they didn't consider anything that they had as their own. It was just an opportunity to share. And guess what happened? The community around them began to take notice. And people came by the thousands to be a part of it. When we look at generosity, we understand that generosity is love built on compassion and care. A love that is drawn to the broken and the needy. A love that values humans as though they bear the image of God. A A love that reacts redemptively in the face of injustice and inequality. A love that looks for opportunities to bless others through the stewardship of their time, talent, and treasure. A love that gives out the very best, not the leftovers. Over the course of the years I've been involved in ministry as a pastor, on occasion somebody would say, hey, listen, we have this piano and we're about to buy a new one. And wondered if you could use this one. We don't have any use for it anymore. Now, think about that, what that says. Not one time did somebody say, hey, you know, we're thinking about buying a new piano. Can the church use a new piano instead of the broken down one we have? Has God ever demonstrated to any of us that he's given us the leftovers? I don't think so. A love, generosity, is a love that gives not until it hurts, but until it helps. That's where the joy comes from. When we gather on the 7th of November on Homecoming Sunday, and we try to find a place in that crowded room, and I promise you it's going to be crowded because you're going to help fill it up. We're going to appreciate a dream come true. Now, don't hear this as belittling anything that we've accomplished. But in some ways, that's a man-sized dream. I think God has some God-sized dreams for this church, including the person that will come and lead our church, shepherd this flock. God has just the right person for that. God has a heart for this community, and he wants us to reach more and more. And not just to feed their stomachs, but to feed their souls and to see them come to faith in Christ. Now, I'm going to ask you to think about this with me for a minute. So if the person next to you is fading a little bit, just help me here, because I want you to think about how you would answer this question. Have you been the recipient of God's generosity? I want you to think of 2 ways that God has been extravagantly generous to you. 2 ways. Now, you don't have to shout them out, but if nothing else, I hope you'll go home and think about it. How has God showed his generosity to you? What impact have these gifts had on your life? How is giving an act of worship and devotion to God in your life? We've received plenty from him. I want you to be specific, and I'd love to hear from you. This is how God has demonstrated his radical, his extravagant grace to me. I want you to think about it. Gordon MacDonald once also wrote, when we give, the world takes notice. I saw that firsthand after that terrible tsunami that killed so many, hundreds of thousands of people back in December of 2003. The first people to show up in Indonesia with helping hands were not Muslims, not the government. They were Christians. They showed up in places where devastation was almost total. Whole villages had been wiped out. When we give, the world takes notice. Why are you here? Why are you doing this for us? Because Christ compels us to. We are most like God when we give. I want to tell you a quick story before we close. The Whittier Area Community Church in Southern California has been a mission-minded church for many years. The leaders had a collective vision. They wanted to build a hospital for orphans in Malawi. Malawi is a densely populated country in South Central Africa. Their efforts began with dedicating a Christmas Eve offering. They did every year. But the proceeds of the offering would go to help build this hospital. But as they began to study this a little more, their research indicated to them that the cost would exceed $160,000. They had never received any more than $25,000 at Christmas. But they decided to go for it. They cast their vision before their church, and the whole church began getting involved in some pretty amazing ways. Children would set up Malawi lemonade stands in their neighborhoods. One couple gave the money that they'd been saving for fertility treatments. All of that to help provide for these children. One woman gave up a full month of physical therapy. It was all she had. Contagious spirit of generosity swept over the church, spilled over to the community, and even other congregations got involved. People who were not members of any church and a number of unbelievers also wanted to help out. New conversations spread the news, which led to more donations and words of support. When the time came to receive the Christmas offering, the leaders began to count the gifts. They did not receive $25,000. They did not receive $160,000. They received $500,000. It's amazing what happens when God's people choose to be generous. When we choose a life of sharing, of blessing others because we are blessed. We are entering the season of the holidays. And while I know Halloween is upon us, we need to skip over that one perhaps and get right into the Thanksgiving season, because there's a lot of reasons for us to give thanks. But I want you to remember this. I want you to know that you are blessed to bless. And there are people like that man that you heard from a few minutes ago throughout this congregation who understand that truth. Because you have built your life on understanding how good God has been to you, and you want to be like God. You want to give. And it might be your time, your treasure, it might be your talent. It might be the uniqueness that you bring to the table. And when you pick up your brick, you're going to help build something that will last. Let's pray together. Lord, I know that these are tough times. Costs are going up, but income isn't. There's so much that we can do that doesn't require a overflowing wallet. So many ways that we can demonstrate the spirit of love and caring and compassion and generosity. So help us to raise our vision and help us seek God-sized dreams for our individual lives and for our church. Because there's so much that the people of God can accomplish. Help us, oh God. Like Jabez of the Old Testament, enlarge our territory. Give us more opportunity. Lead us down paths we've never trod. Help us to try things that seem almost impossible. But there is nothing impossible with you. Grant us a deep desire to open our lives and to show others that we are truly grateful for all you have done for us. Father, how we love you. And we are so humbled by the fact that you love us. Bless us now, Lord. Help us to give with joy of ourselves. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. I think one of the most dangerous hymns in the Bible is the one that we're going to sing. I surrender all. That really is a huge step, isn't it? I surrender some, part. The hymn says we don't hold back. You know why? Because God doesn't hold back. Did you notice this morning when the sun came up what a beautiful day we've been given? It's a gift. Your life is a gift. Do you choose to surrender it into the hands of the one who can do the most with it? That's really what this is. Surrender is not defeat. Surrender is an awareness that in God's hands, life can truly be amazing. We're going to stand and we're going to sing. I'm going to be right down here at the front. You come and pray with me. Come share a decision you'd like to make or that you're thinking about. Let's spend this time wisely as we stand together and as we sing.
All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him, in His presence daily live. I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all to Jesus I surrender, humbly at His feet I bow. Worldly pleasures all forsaken, take me, Jesus, take me now. I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all.
Mean it. I really do. You have your homework assignment, 2 ways that God has enriched your life and proved to be generous in your life. So I'm expecting a good result, and I hope you'll think about that. Remember, this afternoon is volleyball. I would think if you got on Rex's team, it might be a good thing. But if you need to, go home, take a nap, come back and enjoy the fellowship together. Look forward to this week. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Let's go in His peace. God bless.